Hello, here we are again on podcast number 9 of the Gordon and Cherie Show, and I am so grateful that people are tuning in, and we are here to give life-giving messages to help people live an abundant life, even through their difficulties, their pain, and their suffering. So here we go, honey. You have a lot of great words to share today, and I can't wait to talk about it. But first, please remember that we are wanting a community to continue to be formed as we're doing this. Please like us on our Facebook page, follow us, subscribe on YouTube to our podcast, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We're on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. So please, on one of those venues, listen and see. Hopefully, you're getting something new and encouraging every time you tune in. And please send us your feedback too. Send us your questions.
That was a good introduction. I don't think I could have memorized as much as you did as far as the different venues of social media that we have. So the big thing is that people are responding. And we're actually overwhelmed with the feedback that we've received so far. Mm-hmm. Additionally, I think you're really counting these podcasts so that JJ, when he listens to those, he knows which number it is each time. So,
well, he is our 4-year-old grandson, and he really likes to keep things in order, just like his G-daddy. There's a little OCD going on in the family. But
I love my grandson. There's no doubt.
We are not going to talk about OCD today, though. We are going to talk about something that's actually a lot more exciting, which I think some of the feedback that we've had from people, and it's a great piece of feedback, is they just want to hear some practical things, practical steps to change. We've addressed so many things, especially spiritually, because it all has to begin. And it really ends there, right? But through the middle, there are practical steps that every single person can start implementing in their life to begin walking from that old to new. And I would really love it if you would kick this off a little bit.
We're going to break this up into 3 different segments. Mm-hmm. The first segment is going to be create order and routine. That's rule number 1.
I don't know why I'm laughing when you say routine, but go ahead.
Well, there's some OCD coming out in that one. Rule number 2, determine your way of living. Mm-hmm. And rule number 3, do not be a victim.
That's good.
So let's begin by creating order and routine. So what questions do you have related to that, Cherise?
Well, I guess one thing is, as you're going through the practical physical changes, do you start those when your pain stops?
No.
Do you have to wait until you have a good day to start a physical change?
No.
Okay. Those are really elaborate answers. Thank you for sharing.
No. People have to realize this. When you're suffering from chronic pain and you've gotten out of bed and you're now standing up, does that mean that you're going to fight and beat, and are you battle tested against the resistance that you have from pain? Probably not. Most likely, you're not going to make major changes that way for your life. And if you have chronic pain for the rest of your life for some reason, for instance, I've had chronic pain for 27 years, I still deal with the real resistance that comes from chronic pain. And for people who do not know, I deal with neuropathic pain. I've had 4 neck surgeries. I've developed, because of that compromised immune system that I've had and my nervous system, I've basically 1 functioning disc in my neck. The rest is bones and plates and grafts, and I'm kind of held together like a modern day Frankenstein. Basically,
I love monsters.
Yes. Basically, I deal with a lot of neuropathic or pain that travels down my arms and especially my legs, that's burning. And sometimes it's just too much to take. And that really exhausts me.
And then I kick you.
Then you kick me.
Because You have to be kept in line somehow.
Yes.
Okay.
So if there's not one resistance, I have two forms of resistance to deal with.
Spousal resistance?
Spousal resistance.
Okay.
But seriously, moving forward, I've dealt with a compromised system on other organs in my body. So I've developed autoimmune problems such as rheumatoid arthritis. And I've had more than a half dozen surgeries on my kidneys for kidney stones.
Which we thought this week you were going in again for number 8.
One is developing now. I already feel the symptomatology of it. My body is extremely fatigued. There is a resistance against my body, but that does not mean that I stop.
You actually articulated this so well this morning about your kidney and how you have to mentally get through that every day right now. And what did you say to me? Because it actually settled me down, because I'm the one like anticipating this delivery of a kidney stone, not a baby, but a kidney stone from you. And the anticipation builds up every day right now.
For you, it builds up. For me, when it happens, and I know it's going to be extremely painful, and I know it's going to take every bit of mental and physical strength that I have just to deal with it. And my kidney stones have typically been 5 millimeters and larger, so they're usually impassable throughout the structures of
your
of
male
my body.
part?
Well, it's ureter and urethra. The human body cannot take 5 millimeters to 10 millimeter stones. They stay stuck. And so you can have damage actually to your kidney. So I've dealt with that for years. But yes, I do feel one coming on. And I said to you this morning to calm you down, we're not going to sit on pins and needles of what could happen.
That's right.
We know what's going to happen. So let's still walk forward. Let's still walk with confidence in our faith. Let's not sit there and start worrying and add this psychological drama to what's going to happen. Let's not be a victim.
So you mentioned the word resistance.
Yes.
And I love that, because related to what you're just describing, Stephen Pressfield in the book War of Art, I want to thank a friend of mine, Benjamin Day, for introducing that book into our life.
Shout out to Ben.
It's a great book. I love it. In it, the whole message in this book really talks about resistance. And I love this one statement: resistance has no power on its own. It is fueled by our own fears. It is fueled by our own fears. By overcoming and controlling our fears, we'll beat resistance. Now,
Amen.
I would say this: that's exactly what you're describing, as far as the kidney stone, and you're not going to just be waiting. You're not going to be You're not going to be enslaved to fear, waiting. You're going to go on until that time happens. You can't overly anticipate the worst, because it may be inevitable, it's coming, but you don't have to live in that space dealing with resistance that's not even there yet, if that makes sense. The situation hasn't happened. So I love that you're the one in pain, and then you keep me in check, because I'm about to have a panic attack worrying about you. Like, when are we going to the hospital? When is this going to happen? And I'm so proud of you, because you truly have learned through all of these years to live moment by moment in the present moment that you're in. And you can't accelerate those moments by fears of what's coming. If you did that, you would be back in bed, like we talked about in our last podcast. You wouldn't get out of bed. But you are out of bed. You are determined. You're going to move on. So let's keep moving on towards steps about practical change.
Well, let's start with creating order and routine. When you look at your life, when you're standing up, what do you change? And the first thing that I knew is this: I needed to change my diet, and I needed to change my diet radically. So here's our body. It's supposed to be the holy temple. It houses the Holy Spirit in it. We're supposed to feed this body and worship this body as a spiritual, rational service to God. So here we are. What are we putting into our body? And so
What were you putting into your body?
Well, for me, the medication helped bring the weight gain, much of it. Okay.
We're talking there were like 2 Gordons, remember?
Yes, there were. There were 2 Gordons.
Yeah, you were double the size, just about.
Just about double the size. So I was looking at this. I tried to look at food from a whole different perspective. And I was looking at, when did I eat? What was the timing? How did I eat? What were the portions? How much was I eating at one particular time? What was I eating? I even used this from behavioral changes to what were the size of my plates, my forks, my cups. I know I'm
going to say it. You still use your baby fork.
I still
It's really crazy.
It's not a baby fork.
It's a baby fork.
JJ would use it. It is.
He's a 4-year-old.
It is the salad fork. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
But I looked at every aspect. So it was important to say, okay, my body is out of control. Let's take the foods that I have, and they were essentially proteins and vegetables.
Well, you switched to that.
I switched to that.
But I would say this, honey, because you really had so little vices. You were not doing all these other things. You were doing your best to try to walk this out as nobly as you could. But I think food was one of those last things that you were holding on to. You had let go of so many other bad habits or behaviors or this or that, but food, that was the one last comfort that you actually had. And it's almost like it was an anesthesia for you. You could go into a sugar coma. You could, food really affected you because it was a comfort. I saw that. I saw what would happen. Or, you would have that extra giant dessert, or that huge steak and the dessert. And, but honestly, I didn't want to hurt you by chastising you over that because there were so few comforts that you actually had. But when you woke up to it.
When I woke up to it, I decided to reduce my carbohydrate intake. In fact, and this is radical. This is where the OCD comes in. I've had one pasta dish since 2006.
That's disgusting.
I know. I love spaghetti. I love Italian food. I love breads. And I've reduced those radically in my life. And I moved to the portion size of approximately 4 to 5 ounces of meat and a hand size full of vegetables with my meal. And that's all I would feed myself.
You started transitioning to foods that would give you life.
That would give me life.
Even though the pain didn't go away, I saw that there was this huge transformation happening within your body.
Correct. I also reduced any alcohol intake. It actually caused, and it still does today, it still causes me headaches. Mm-hmm. So typically I drink a lot of water. If people drink alcohol around me, which you enjoy your glass of wine here and there, I'm not offended by that whatsoever. People can do what they want to do. But for me personally, I had to radically look at my life and say, what are you going to put in your body?
Yep.
So I drink a lot of water, which is ironic because I have kidney stones and dehydration is part of the issue, but my body's not absorbing it. Eating times. Mm-hmm. I eat early, and I typically like my last meal by 5 p.m. Why? Because my body digests the food, and it's usually something simple to eat. I don't care if it's a small salad or something, but it allowed my body not to have that acid reflux and to metabolize the food fully before I wake up the next morning.
I think your metabolism really changed in your pain cycles. It affected metabolism, didn't it? I mean, it slowed it down through the medication that you took.
Yes.
And because of that, it's almost like I would observe you eating and you would complain afterwards, even though you felt a comfort for it. It was like a brick was in your stomach. It wouldn't go anywhere. It
was like a bomb in my stomach that was saying, here's time for inflammation to actually become activated for the rest of the night. Mm-hmm. And that moves us into the next part about creating order and routine. Sleep patterns. Sleep has not been my friend for decades. I have dealt with sleepless nights, sleep interruptions. Some nights I've slept out of 8 hours, I've slept 2.5 hours. People with chronic pain are dealing with lack of sleep. They're not having controlled sleep no matter what their mattress is. And we've got the best of the best. We've gone through many mattresses. We've different pillows. We've done everything we can to help me with my sleep, because sometimes neuropathic pain in the middle of the night will shoot off like lightning sparks.
When you are finally asleep, there are times where it's like sleeping next to fireworks, because your body is just going, into spasm mode, and your nervous system is it's just kind of very stimulated. And so that has been interesting, because sleeplessness has also affected the one right next to you, because it's been so challenging for you.
Right.
But what are some things that have actually helped with that?
It's creating a specific time to go to bed and a specific time to get out of bed. Because if I relied my activities based on how I felt, some days I would never get out of bed. And there are a few days that we need like that over a period of time, maybe the first quarter of the year. And if there's weather where there's large barometric pressure changes, or winters come on with snow or something else, sometimes you need that. But from a daily perspective, I try to go to bed, for instance, at 9:30 at night. And I'm usually up at between 4:30 to 5:30.
Well,
I know that's early for a lot of people.
We don't really recommend that people get up at 4:30, but your body just is awake if you go to bed that early, which you do. You are very disciplined about your sleep routine.
And the third thing that I would look at that people do not realize in creating this order and routine is to exercise, and exercise. And when I say that, I'm not saying do exercises that create compression forces or high impact activity on the joints or soft tissues or on the vulnerable areas of your body that can aggravate pain. Start with walking if possible. That's what I started with.
Right.
And I'm speaking to the audience member who can do this.
Yeah.
So if you can walk, when you learn how to walk 3 miles a day, and it might take you an hour to do it to start, or it might take you an hour and a half to do it to start, when you can learn to do that, endorphins kick off in your body, and it's a slight anesthesia to your body. Believe it or not, you're going to have some pain reduction to some level. I don't care if it's 10%.
Yeah.
So when you're done, the results are excellent. So that's what I would recommend.
That's really, really good.
Yeah. When you look at the endorphins, those peptides basically activate your body's opiate receptors. And that's what causes that analgesic effect. So it is effective. It has worked. And I know for myself, right now, I've reduced my treadmill time. I was 6 times a week for 13 years. Now I'm at 4 to 5 times a week, and I usually do another activity, whether I'm participating with Pilates, which is non-impact, it's core strengthening.
The way that you do it.
The way it's
the
rehab.
Classical Pilates.
Yes, the rehab type Pilates where there's stretching and lengthening, and you get a lot of strength from that. You get mind and body coordination. Pilates has been an excellent form of exercise for me. And you can basically regulate the type of exercise that you do. It doesn't have to be a CrossFit style Pilates.
There's so many people that are just, they're picking up tires or they're doing this or that. And that's fine if you're healthy and you can do those type of exercises. But what you're saying is just get moving. And do it the way that your body can do it.
Yes.
And stop. We talked about it on the last episode. I'm going to say it again. Stop comparing your fitness to people who are fine, who are healthy, who are perfectly engaged in that world and just do what your body can do for that day. And I love, we have a friend, Stacy Hand in Destin, Florida. And she and her husband, Justin, they're overcomers. She is an overcomer in chronic pain.
I love her.
And she is a champion for people who are suffering with debilitating scoliosis like she has. But she has found, first of all, she gives us a lot of kudos at times. We love her because she's also an inspiration to us. One thing that seems to really help her in her chronic condition is the pool, the swimming pool. And it takes some of that pressure off of her joints. And it relieves her pain while she is able to exercise and do mobility in the pool. So that may be a solution for somebody who can't do things outside of water.
So for Colorado, Charisse, does that mean that we're going to purchase a hot tub soon?
I knew something was coming up about this. Oh my gosh. But also one other thing I want to share about what Stacy taught us in her communication through doing anything physical for the day. She relates it to how many spoons she has for that day. And I love that analogy. It actually is one of the best things that I've heard somebody say that is living with chronic pain and trying to determine the mobility or how much physical activity you can do for that day. So she might wake up and say, I've got 5 spoons today, or I've only got 3 spoons. And she has to determine her physical activities by those amount of spoons. She can't base it on anybody else's spoons. She has to base it on hers. But I promise you, that girl she has an endurance because of that, because she recognizes her limitations. She also is growing in her strengths because of that.
Yes, she is. Mm-hmm. And by the way, maybe the 10 spoons are your maximum energy level and 0 spoons is you have nothing left.
That's right.
Well, number 4. So we've dealt with radically changing your diet.
Mm-hmm.
We've dealt with normalizing your sleep patterns as much as possible. Sometimes you can't do it completely. We've dealt with exercise. Number 4 under this topic for me is massively dedicated to reading the Word of God. Mm-hmm. The Word of God has been instrumental in some of my physical changes. In fact, a lot of physical changes. It's when you're able, instead of expecting God to come down and fit his words into your brokenness so that you're healed, a lot of times I've realized that surrender is to move and line up your life to the reality of what the Word of God is.
Yes.
And that's where I've seen where the mind can look at the body and say, you are my slave body, mm-hmm. in the sense that I'm the one that's going to coordinate activities, mm-hmm. not just this burning body, mm-hmm. that's fueling brokenness and emotional instability and despair, to allow that portion of your life to rule how you're going to live your life.
It was like the honey, which, by the way, honey has, it's so interesting because the Bible talks about honey so many times. And there's healing principles in honey because it can't harbor bacteria. And the Word of God for you has been like this honey it's not taking away all the pain, but it's like drizzled all over you internally so that you have something that's fending away all the bacteria that's trying to get in of and I'm not saying literal bacteria, but I'm just saying spiritual bacteria. All the spiritual junk that's trying to take you down on top of your pain.
The toxicity of life.
Yep.
And the toxicity of your own pain.
So very powerful.
Section number 2, mm-hmm. determine your way of living. Mm-hmm. And so I've written down some brief things. So at any given moment, you mentioned earlier with kidney stones that I live in the present moment. Mm-hmm. That is part of the secret sauce to living an effective life and living abundantly through chronic pain.
And for all of us.
For all of us.
Every single person listening, whether you're in pain or not, it's very important.
Number 1, reframe your prayer life. Mm-hmm. Many times we're learning our prayers by what we hear from someone else. Have that intimate relationship with God where you're reframing the words you use and you're opening yourself up more honestly
Love it.
to God. Number 2, this deals with a sensitive topic, and I do not want to step on anyone's toes on this one, but you may have to reevaluate your medication use. And I'm talking about the difference between pain medications and opioids and vitamin supplements and NSAIDs off the counter and everything else that you're taking.
You had to make some huge determinations.
I made some major determinations, and I am pro-physician. So I'll just let the folks know out there, I believe in the medical system as well as alternative healthcare, like chiropractic, naturopathic doctors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I believe in all the different specialties of the medical system. But there's a point where, especially with long-term use, you have to look at what's the efficacy of using long-term opioids.
That's so good.
And that's what I dealt with. I dealt with morphine and methadone and for several years. And I eventually got off those medications. Now, people are not supposed to go cold turkey off these. There's cocktail changes. But I think patients can have a sit-down conversation with their physician to ask about long-term ramifications.
That's right.
These medications do this. I actually feel worse in the long run when I'm taking all these medications.
Well, you were losing your mind on top of your body.
My mind, you become foggy and depressed, and it's natural to move into despondency.
I think it did amplify for you. Some of the particular meds amplified depression.
That's what some of the side effects are.
Yeah.
So if you can have a sit-down conversation with your doctor and determine what's best for you and potentially getting off some of the medications, even though you might feel some sharp episodes of pain, I think that's a very healthy route to take.
It's good.
Number 3, because I had all of this fogginess and mental sluggishness to who I was, study and learn something new.
Yeah.
Don't just rely on the old things that you used to do.
I was going to say former knowledge doesn't serve you today. I mean, it adds up, yes, but you had to learn something new in order to move ahead.
Right.
And
I did.
You learned a lot. I mean, you actually enrolled back into college.
I rolled back.
You're already a doctor.
I was already a doctor. I enrolled in a Christian organization degree, my organizational management. My focus was, I didn't know why I was there. I was being obedient to the Spirit of God in me, but I just wanted to renew my mind again. I wanted to look at things from a fresh perspective.
It was so good because as your body was still in so much pain, but I saw that there was a purpose growing inside of you because you were allowing your mind to be renewed. Right. You weren't going to get your mind stuck with your body. Your mind was going to start propelling your body.
I was determined to walk into a new way of living. Number 4 on my list, and this was a hard one for me to cope with. Take naps.
You still struggle. You apologize to me every day that you take a nap.
I do.
It irritates me.
And I do not take a nap every day. But what happens, I've just grown up with discipline and in fact, iron hand type discipline and hard work and long hours. And you can't do that in pain.
But I don't consider naps being defeated. I mean, some of the most intelligent people that we've known on this planet believe in naps, and that power nap totally recharges the brain.
I've relinquished to the power of the nap, okay, because I'm up so early. Let's give a 5:30 as a standard time, 5:30 a.m.
Yeah.
By the time we hit noon, that's 6.5, 7 hours.
I see that you become completely foggy. Your eyes are like glass at about the middle of the day. And
well, thank you, Sharice.
I mean, it is what it is. But, I love the fact that when you deliberately take that break in the day, you're a whole different husband for the rest of the day.
Well, I have strength to make it to the evening time.
Yeah.
If I don't take that nap, by the time 4:30, 5 o'clock comes around, my body is screaming in pain and I want to go to bed.
That's right.
So I want to avoid that pitfall. And people with chronic pain, you can avoid those pitfalls.
That's good.
And I actually get more work done by breaking up my day, breaking up the schedule. What do I accomplish in the morning?
Yep.
What projects do I accomplish in the afternoon?
Yep.
And we did this with the real estate business. For instance, if I could help you with 2 projects a week to complete things, that's 100 projects a year. How productive is that? And how profitable is that financially?
It seems so small as you're working it, but it does add up because it's the tortoise and the hare, right? I mean, it's that mentality where the tortoise is, you're going to make it to the finish line. And actually, you have more to bring to the table than a lot of people who are perfectly healthy that are too scattered to complete something.
Yes.
But you have to take, I've always seen this in the way that our real estate is run. You cannot put on your plate what I put on my plate. You have to put on your plate what you can put on your plate. And you do it so well, though, and you complete those things.
And I'm miserable at multitasking. And someone with chronic pain,
you can't
deal with that chaos.
And I constantly test you in that way.
Constantly. The next one, number 5, breathing.
Would you like to demonstrate?
No. So inhale for 4 seconds and then exhale for 4 seconds and slow things down. This will help determine your way of living.
I really and truly, like our entire marriage, I've heard you breathe deliberately like that. You do that almost it's like you're expelling the pain when you're exhaling. You're not letting it build up in your system.
Well, I want to inhale the love of God, and I want to exhale his mercy towards the things in which pain creates conflict for me. I don't want to harbor anything against people. So I take it as a mental, contemplative thought process as well as something that's healthy for you physically when you're dealing with pain. The next section, do not be a victim. I just made a choice. You can have pain and you can have, I don't care if you're dying of cancer or a terminal illness, you can still not be a victim until the last day you have breath.
That's so true.
So I made a choice, and I think there's people out there with chronic pain that are at the crossroads. You do not have to be a victim.
That's right.
And I think one of the first things is to take the focus off of yourself with pain and move your focus to other people or other worthwhile projects. That's going to help you identify your purpose.
And, there's a community of people who are also feeling not exactly what you're feeling, but that are also wanting to endure and overcome. And you're not alone, even though it feels so lonely. I mean, It's so true.
Number 2, focus on your strengths, not your weaknesses. Do what you can physically and emotionally instead of putting a heavy load on top of your pain. You don't always have to take the hardest route. Even though you're walking and avoiding the path of least resistance, you're moving forward, you don't have to put unnecessary baggage on top of your lifestyle.
Can I remind you of that?
Yes,
Okay.
honey. Yes, you can.
I will use this one against you. I mean, I will use it for you. How's that?
And the third thing in the category of do not be a victim, do not try to avoid the pressure of pain every time you feel the pain. Sometimes you're just going to feel pain.
That's true.
And so when you learn to accept that and you learn to move on from that and you learn to adapt and cope with that, put your mind on the things that renew your life. That's what's important.
Well, I mean, it goes back to resistance that we talked about initially. And it takes resistance for a beautiful instrument to play. It takes resistance for the piano to have the strings work. But too much resistance and the strings are going to pop. Off of a guitar, let's say. You tune it too tight, too much resistance, they're gone. It explodes. Not enough resistance, you just stay in bed and don't change the mindset. There's no music to be played.
Right.
So you got to keep tuning that instrument of your body as you work through the pain process. And that's one thing I've noticed about you. You've learned through the Spirit of God in you teaches you every day a new amplified level of this. But then you take that into practical terms, and I watch you every day. You're fine tuning that for that day what your body can do.
Yes.
And it's your instrument. You get to play it. It's really, actually, let me say this again. You are God's instrument, but He's allowing you to do the tuning. He's wanting you to tune in so that you can play something beautifully.
Yes. And my thought for the day to finish up today's podcast is this, and we heard this from a former United States women's national soccer coach, Jill Ellis. Risk is an opportunity. And when you're dealing with chronic pain, it's okay to take some risks. Even in pain, you have to take some risks to expand your boundaries.
Yeah.
So that's today's podcast. We're starting to get into some practical action for people.
Yes, we are.
These are some poignant thoughts and different methodologies that we've incorporated in our life that have been highly beneficial.
And let us know what's worked for you.
Yes.
We would love to hear that too.
Absolutely.
So tune in next time.
Have a great day.
Thank you.